I completely rewrote the original presentation I was planning to give during the Mobile Growth Summit in New York that was originally scheduled in July. I changed it again yesterday. To be honest, the reason I did that is neither of these versions really felt relevant or genuine given what was going on in the world today. As everyone's very well aware, here in the United States, there are nearly 1.9 million cases and more than 108,000 people have died from COVID-19 over the past 3 months. States like New York, New Jersey, Illinois, California are among the hardest hit. Healthcare, emergency, grocery, delivery, and custodial staff and teachers have all been put center stage, rightfully so. For the past week, protests have spanned nearly every major US city, and they're now spreading into the suburbs, with protesters demanding justice and police reform for crimes against the Black community. While the protests have been largely peaceful, the racial, political, and economic tensions have created a secondary wave of violence and destruction from some of the participants and really from the police as well. There's fear and frustration paving the way for what we all hope are candid conversations, actions, and meaningful change. As a result of the coronavirus, the travel, retail, services, auto, and retail sectors have been almost decimated. The downstream effects on industries like commercial real estate and the time it will take to stabilize, repair, and revitalize these industries really are unknown. This may seem like an odd way for a marketer to start a keynote about the art and reinvention. But does it really? I mean, the macro trends, global and domestic, have always been major factors that affect all of our businesses and ultimately our marketing of those businesses. Those macro trends include staggering levels of unemployment, health crises, supply chain constraints, civil unrest, safety, and economic concerns that are already across beleaguered industries. A talk on reinventing a brand during quote unquote normal times. Yep, that would typically include a look back at Netflix's Reinvention that cost Blockbuster its video content throne, or a view into how Kodak waited too long to innovate and digital cameras, and let's be honest, ultimately mobile phones took over that industry. Or how ClassPass was perhaps a bit too early and HQ Trivia may be on its second wave of industry advancement. It would also include some wise words of advice fresh out of the tried and true marketing playbook that we've all come to know. Folks, the reality is, this is the one that we all don't want to admit, but it's true. That playbook, it no longer exists. To be honest, marketing's evolution was well underway, but now it's officially time to throw that old playbook away. Since mobile has been on the forefront of marketing innovation for the past 20 years, it's safe to assume continued advancement and invention are actually going to come from this industry. Okay, knowing all this, is it really a good time to talk about reinvention? Is that an echo thought? It sure as shit is, because what's the alternative if we try to force our old ways into this new world that we're in now? One that demands authenticity, empathy, awareness, and action. The old ways don't work, folks. The playbook has to go out the window, and we need a new plan. Reinvention. There's 3 definitions of it, really. To invent again or to build upon, to make over, or to revive/bring back. What we're going to talk about today is which one's right for your company. And what's right for your company is something you're going to have a very large role in proposing. For decades, marketing has fought to have a seat at the decision-making table. Everything has changed, and it's time to dig deep. Using a combination of data, our instincts, creativity to find opportunity and exhibit a spirit of calculated risk. Today, that can mean you're marketing through mayhem. That's what we call it. You can turn your brand into an activist or simply find a way to better serve your customer, because reinvention is no longer a nice to have, and it's absolutely critical. It's critical for you. It's critical for your team, your company, and it's really critical for your industry. And there's no time like the present to get started. So let me introduce myself. My name is Mack McKelvey. I've been in B2B tech marketing for more than 2 decades. My first real job was in mobile, and every job I've had since 1996 has been in the mobile industry. It's been a crazy up to the right growth. I've worked for companies such as VeriSign, British Telecom, SiriusXM, and Millennial Media. And over the past 20 years, I've been on the front lines of network build-outs, consumer best practice development, other regulatory initiatives that have paved the way for huge change in the wireless space, like intercarrier SMS, ringtones, gaming, mobile communications, content, commerce, advertising, and marketing. Today, I lead a firm called SalientMG. Our first client was Rovio, or as many of you may know, the Finnish innovator, the company that created Angry Birds. Over the past 8 years, we have worked with brands such as Verizon, Etsy, Starwood Hotels, and Caesars Entertainment. And we've launched mobile brands such as Moonlighting and Into, which was Grindr's content arm. And we've worked with innovative mobile-first companies such as Ogre, who created a consumer consent manager to help mobile app providers offer consumer control of the data they share, and Uber Media, that collects and provides anonymized data sets showing enterprises how human movement science and insights can be brought to life for their businesses. I have to say it's extremely refreshing today, I think everyone on this call can agree, that pundits no longer talk about mobile as this futuristic channel with so much vision and promise. Mobile arrived years ago. It's not an industry. It permeates every industry. It's information, connection, commerce, and it's entertainment. And many times, it's the difference between life and death. And I'm honestly proud to be part of this industry. So today, I sit here talking to you from the global epicenter, not of just commerce, advertising, and some mobile tech innovation, but of the global pandemic. I'm in New York City, so if you hear sirens or other street noise, I do apologize, but it will likely be a lot quieter than normal, because as I look out my window on the Avenue of the Americas, I no longer see bumper-to-bumper traffic, construction vehicles, and scores of people rushing to their next meeting, date, concert, etc. Everything's different. The few people I see scurrying along the sidewalk are wearing masks and sunglasses. They're likely on an essential errand, not some social call or summer stroll. The air here, honestly, is mixed with a little bit of uncertainty and some tension, but like all of you, I have some faith that it's going to get back to its original pulse very soon. That uncertainty that I mentioned, and that fear, it's really understandable. Nearly 40 million people have filed for unemployment in the US here during this pandemic, so the impact that that will have on consumer and B2B spending may be considerable, and the recovery may last years. But we marketers have to remember something fundamental. All consumers are all still human. We all have basic needs: food, health, safety, friends and family, shelter, and entertainment. Our needs are as real as the challenges that we face. So the time is here for us marketers. This is the time for reinvention. So how can you help your company rise to the occasion? Well, let's talk about where we are. Over the next few slides, I'm going to highlight some data from the consumer research company, Global Web Index. According to GWI, we're no longer in the acute phase, which lasted about 3 months. We're now in the transitory phase of COVID-19, where hundreds of millions of people are starting to emerge from months of sheltering in place, meaning living within their homes, only leaving for essential errands. We don't have a manual for what the next few months are going to look like, so let's look back a little in order to look forward. It's no surprise, everyone on this call knows this, screen time and media consumption patterns have been off the charts. We're all in this mobile industry, so your data probably shows a similar story, but this is again from GWI. A couple things I wanted to note. 52% of consumers are watching more videos, 44% are spending more time on social media, 34% are spending more time in apps. Gaming, streaming, and other forms of entertainment activities are all up and to the right in terms of usage. With millions of people at home, none of this should be a surprise, but what comes next will be. Chances are we'll be studying COVID for decades to come, and some of the companies and sectors who have led the way. And those will likely be looked at as brand champions, and they would include companies like Netflix, big streaming platform you may have heard of, TikTok on social, Amazon, and most of the e-commerce and mobile commerce sector leaders, as well as learning and conference platforms like Zoom and Google Hangouts. And as millions of employees transition to a work from home environment, and teachers transition from an in-classroom instruction to online. Some of this reinvention was painful, but it was essential. What will remain part of our fabric of the world, time will tell. But what are some other sectors that have reinvented themselves or transformed their businesses during this time? GWI data shows that in the transition phase, 42% of global consumers say they intend to eat out at restaurants less often. 31% say they'll eat at fast food outlets less often and visit cinemas less when restrictions are actually lifted. These are huge implications. There are huge implications to this behavior shift. Who successfully navigated it and how? I want to pause here and talk a little bit about Chipotle. QSR seems like an odd one, right, for a digital conversation, but the company invested in a massive digital transformation about 2 years ago. Working with order management company Sparkfly, the fast casual company has benefited from years of testing numerous digital initiatives, both in-store and above store, across loyalty and user acquisition alike, and it's paid off. The company's digital success is one to be studied. If you're a marketer in the QSR or fast casual dining space, get laser focused on your digital infrastructure. Can you weather a second phase of this pandemic, or even outside of COVID? Ask yourself this question. Are you giving your customers the best possible end-to-end experience? What can other brands that are outside of QSR, fast casual dining, learn about Chipotle's reinvention to a digital leader? Okay, 47% of consumers say they'll wait for some time or a long time before visiting shops. This jumps to 59% for outdoor venues like sports stadiums and music festivals, and even higher to 64% for indoor venues like sports arenas, concert halls, and cinemas. This could indicate a behavior shift that may remain for months or longer. So who's capitalized? What next? Let's look at a few. If you're in retail or consumer product marketing, or even in gaming, think about the opportunity for innovative ways to connect your customer or provide a new kind of customer experience. Look at what Fortnite did with their in-game experiences with Travis Scott, which was a concert experience which drew almost 12 million attendees. I think to date, it's still the largest concert ever attended. Plus the EDM set with DJ Steve Aoki, Deadmau5, and Dylan Francis. The marketing possibilities here are endless, from product placement to sponsorships to simply bringing consumers to new worlds to explore and engage. Don't underestimate the power of connection and engagement. Look to the rise of Instagram Live community building that entertainers like D-Nice, who created Club Quarantine, those experiences are on mobile, and his sets draw tens of thousands of people regularly. Let's talk about travel. It's impossible to overstate the impact the virus has had on the travel industry. Everything from hotels to Airbnbs and flights. And GWI said the purchases of vacations or trips continue to be the most delayed category, overtaking categories like clothing, smartphones, luxury items, and home appliances and devices. Right now, 49% of consumers say they've delayed purchasing a vacation or trip, while 30% of US consumers will prioritize purchasing a vacation after the outbreak. Just 11% say the same of booking a flight. So there's an opportunity for more regionalized strategies for travel marketers. For mobile game and entertainment developers, is there a way to engage those that may be car-bound for long stretches? Or what kind of virtual experiences can you create so travelers can leverage VR, AR, or even mixed reality? Let's visit one more stat from Global Web Index before we move on. The exercise reinvention. 50% of people who are now working out at home intend to continue that habit. 50%. Peloton seemed to be waiting for its moment, a business model that revolved around in-home experiences, mobile app, 90 days free, fitness data, catapulted Peloton to a $13 billion industry darling. And Mirror was invented by a former ballerina. She took her idea and turned a seemingly standard mirror into a $300 million fitness phenomenon. Let's pause for a moment and acknowledge I've run through a lot of information in a very short period of time, but we have to really think about this for a moment. There's no better time to reflect. All the changes that there have been in the market, there have been companies that have found opportunities to better serve their clients and lead. I raced through a lot. We still have about 15 minutes left, so I want to jump to the last section. It's pause time. So I want to open this up for a little bit of a discussion or to answer some questions, but I want to pause and pose some first, because I think that there is a moment that we're never going to get back. We've never really had before. And that is a point of reflection on a few different areas. One is the industry. Think about how your industry has changed over the past 90 days. Your company. How did your company act or react? Were you prepared to navigate this emergency? What do you need to fortify before creating a reinvention plan? Think about your customers. What did you learn about your customers' needs during this time? How can you improve their experience or match their current or future needs? And think about yourself and your team. How did your team react or act? What did you learn about them? Did you foster collaboration and open dialogue and encourage ideas? How have you changed as a result of this crisis? And what change do you want to bring in the future? So with that, let me pause and see if we have any discussion that we want to have around any of these areas. And Casey, I may ask for your help here to navigate if we have any Q&A.
I'm not seeing any Q&A yet. Audience, please know that there is a Q&A tab in the left-hand corner, or sorry, the right-hand corner. And you can go there and ask questions, and we will be happy to answer them. I'm still not seeing anything come in. Why don't you go ahead and continue, and we'll see how things look in a few more minutes.
That sounds great. Okay, so let's go on, and let's pause here for a rising tide. So as I mentioned before, that this is a really unique time for all of us to reflect on our industries. I flew through a few examples of companies that had done an amazing job at reinvention, companies like a Netflix, and the entire ecosystem that was built around Netflix and continues to be built around the streaming and OTT market overall. It created a rising tide of opportunities for content developers and creators for all sorts of ancillary industries. So I challenge you to think about that example in particular, but there's numerous others. In your industry, how do you think about a rising tide? I'll share a little example with you, which is a personal one. It's a smaller industry at the time, and the date was, I want to say, early 2009. So I was at a mobile advertising company, startup. The company was fairly early. I think I was employee about number 30. The company was let's call it a small fish in a small pond at the time. Mobile advertising isn't what it is today. And the one thing that we knew fundamentally as a company is that in order to, grow our market and in order to grow our company, we had to grow the entire industry. And that was the fundamental part of our entire marketing strategy. And by growing the entire industry, it drew in a great attraction to companies like Google and Apple, who acquired two of our biggest competitors. And suddenly you had some of the most massive companies in the world, like Facebook, putting a ton of assets and attention on the mobile advertising space. That rising tide created an opportunity, and it created an entire industry. Our company benefited from that. We went from about 9 million in revenue to about 103 million in public within 3.5 years. And there are now thousands of companies in that overall ecosystem. That rising tide mentality really did benefit everyone. So let's talk about the foundation. I actually love this quote from Marilyn Monroe. A lot of what the market sees, right, is the sex and sizzle, but at the bottom line, or the bottom of the pyramid that they don't often see, is the foundation. And it's one of those areas that we don't often get time to take a breath and really focus on. But in a weird way, we are in a little bit of a pause, and now is a perfect time for everyone to look at their marketing foundations and then the foundations of their overall company. Once your foundations are stable, think about whether your company can continue to stay focused on what it's currently selling. Are there immediate or near-term opportunities for diversified revenue streams? How can you reach and engage customers in a more compelling way? These are all things that you can pause to think about right now as you plot your reinvention. And then I think the other thing that we really have to focus on better, all of us marketers, all the time, but today more than ever, as we talked about those macro trends in the very early part of this presentation, we talked about all the challenges that are in the market and that consumers still have those fundamental needs. Putting that consumer in the center, providing a stellar customer experience. Are there ways to serve them better? Think about their concerns, their challenges, their needs. What incremental value can you and your company provide? That should be literally the part that you spend the most time thinking about, because that's at the heart of reinvention. And then that wouldn't be complete. You can't do this, you can't do any of this alone. Any move towards reinvention will require a top-down and bottoms-up approach. If we've learned anything during the last few months, people are everything. Tap into your team, trust yourself, be the marketing leader that helps reinvent your company, approach, or industry. And remember that your team, your company, and the individuals around you really are the key to making this whole come together. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. So I've answered all of them, which never happens. But I want to say, Casey, and everyone that's listening, if you were playing conference bingo, I didn't say we're all in this together. I didn't say unprecedented, challenging times. They're all implied. So if you're playing conference bingo, you can give yourself the credit anyways. But what I wanted to leave you all, yeah,
sorry,
go ahead, Casey.
We do have one question.
Oh, perfect.
We have a question from Dave. Do you believe we are now in a state of constant reinvention because of the uncertainty in the world?
I do. And I think that's been building for a while. I think that the mobile industry is in a really unique spot, as I mentioned, to be leading a lot of the conversation around this. We used to call it mobile minutes back 5, even almost 10 years ago, because mobile moves so quickly, and the constant need for reinvention in the mobile industry started, at its first devices around pagers and, oh my gosh, I'm dating myself now, but pagers, and then the earliest of cell phones pre-smartphones, and then there's smartphones, tablets, all the other devices in the ancillary app economy and industries that have been built around all of those early devices. We've had to move really fast. And I think that in a lot of ways, the world around us is maybe catching up to how fast we've had to move. I think these macro trends and even the micro trends that impact every one of our businesses should have every marketer, really thinking about their own impact in their companies and their markets in a unique way. I think they should make test and learn and reinvention part of the fabric of the culture of their teams, because at this point, there's no such thing really as any bad ideas, because anything that didn't work before, it's worth trying again. I mean, we're sitting here on a virtual call, right? We're sitting here on something. If you had come to me on my team a year ago and said, you know what we should do? A 3-day virtual event. I mean, let's be honest, we all would have thought that was not the way we would probably take our path. But the world changed around us, and good on, the Mobile Growth Summit and the events industry for finding a way to keep us all connected. I think reinvention is going to be constant.
Awesome, thank you. And then we do have another question now as well. Is there any data on the market interest of VR travel?
I'm going to give you my email at the end of this. There absolutely is. Look, I think VR and AR, we all joke about the way mobile used to be talked about as this is the year of mobile, and that's been going on for 10, 15 years now, and thankfully we don't hear that as much anymore. But I think there's been a lot of doubt around the entry points for VR, and in particular because of the equipment needed to bring it to life. But I have seen there's been a couple of countries around the world that have done some live streaming. They've also done some VR applications to bring their locations to life, to encourage those that are going to plan future travel to come to their locations. But I will give you my email, shoot me a note, and I will track the data down for you, because I have seen some, and again, anything from almost 6 months, anything older than 6 months is almost irrelevant. I think you have to look at this point and moving forward, but I have seen some recent things, and happy to share those with you.
Fantastic. And another question from Bhavini. What is the importance of engagement, voice and audio during these times? Do you believe it is nice to have, or will it become a necessity?
It's a necessity. I think, we have to think about voice in particular. You have to think about all the communities you serve. For example, if you have vision impaired consumers, voice is a critical application for connection. It's also, let's be honest, for all of us who are on video calls all day, voice applications can be used for everything from utility to all the way through entertainment. I think the IoT revolution has shown us that there are absolutely applications for voice in the home, for utility, as well as commerce. And I think that we're going to continue to see a lot of innovation there. What was the other side of voice? I'm sorry, Casey?
I believe it was just voice and audio. Let me.
Oh, so voice and audio.
Yeah, voice and video. Yeah.
I would also say that the same goes for video. You have hearing impaired. You have to think about your communities much more holistically beyond demographics of age, race, gender, sexual orientation. You have to think about all of your consumers and their needs, and technology can solve some major barriers to entry and barriers for engagement. So I would think about those often when you're considering marketing reinvention.
Awesome. And let's see here. We also have, are you localizing change by geo or vertical?
My localizing change, can you be more specific? Can the person that asked the question? Oh, I'm sorry. So specific for today, I focused only on the United States, given that there's 2 other regions that are covered in 2 other days of this summit. So I didn't bring in anything from Europe or Asia, but certainly there has been impact globally on all of these macro trends, and there will continue to be. And in a way, I will say I've been in marketing for over a couple decades now. This is the first time I've truly felt a global marketing community where we are all facing some of the similar changes and obstacles at the same time. So I think we can learn a lot from each other. And I think rebuilding is going to take all of us. So when I talk about a rising tide, I think we have to think about our industries, and we have to think about our global industries. And then we have to think about how they impact our local or regionalized audience bases as well. I don't know if that answered your question, but I'll provide my email if you have anything further there.
Awesome. And I think we have time for one more, and we do have one more lingering question. Are there any hacks you recommend to foster change internally?
Oh, this is the big one. I think we marketers all often see, that there is a very big difference between sometimes the executive teams talking the talk. I will say what I have seen across our client base and in the industry as a whole, that there has been an opportunity for groups internally who maybe don't get necessarily the biggest voice or decision-making authority to get some leeway on testing right now. I would say that's true in HR. HR and partnering right now would be a great opportunity, particularly around employer branding, internal communications, and internal innovation, to be partnering with your tech teams, to be partnering with your HR teams, and bringing a little bit more of an integrated idea approach to senior management. Because a lot of times marketing does go it alone. I think now more than ever, we're seeing the impact we can all have when we work across our teams a little bit more closely. So I wouldn't call that a hack necessarily, but it is. I think it is a challenge for everyone. And I think that we're going to see more and more organizations succeed when they've got the power of multiple voices and multiple teams that are not as siloed coming at tackling some of these big issues.
Awesome, fantastic. Any final thoughts from you before we close this session?
I don't think so. I think what I will say, I'll put on my camera so I can see all of you. I think the one thing I will say is, again, I covered up some of the gray, thankfully, but mobile has changed a lot. Mobile will continue to change and innovate. You guys should all be very proud to be part of this industry. I've been very fortunate to stumble into it and make a career of it. But I will say I'm also equally as bullish and more bullish than I have been in a long time on the power of marketing to get us through this transition phase and beyond. So more power to all of you. Like I said, I'll make my email address available. Feel free to connect. If you'd like any of the copies of the slides or presentation, happy to provide that as well. And can't wait to see what you guys do next. Reinvent the hell out of this stuff.
Awesome, thank you. And let's see, where can we get your email?
It is Mack, M-A-C-K, at SalientMG.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn and say that you were on the session today, and we'll be connected.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Great. Everyone have a good one. Thanks.
Next session will be coming up in just a few minutes. It's with Reddit and AppsFlyer. Please stick around.